Well, over 10,000 farmers and stakeholders attended the 2025 Commodity Classic here in Denver, Colorado, and almost all 10,000 stopped by the Helena booth to see what they have going on. And while we may be seeing the latest and greatest in technology and innovation to help producers, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, especially on the government level, that impacts producers and their ability to grow crops in the countryside. And I'm excited today to be joined by Sean McCarty. He is the Director of Government Affairs for Helena. And Sean, as we talk about regulations and the impact that regulations have on producers in the countryside, that's sometimes overlooked when we're talking about growing crops and having inputs and looking towards the future. But it is a vital opportunity, though, for producers to have a voice in Washington, D.C. with your role.
Absolutely. I mean, agriculture as a percentage of the population is an increasingly smaller percentage. And so there's probably more need than ever before to ensure that we're getting that voice out there to protect those tools. We've seen a lot of things happen over the last few years that potentially limit that toolbox. And so protecting that freedom to operate is paramount.
Now, the Endangered Species Act, a lot of our viewers and listeners, we think of things like the grizzly bear and the delisted gray wolf in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, but there's smaller endangered species that maybe get overlooked from some of the news media headlines out there. Let's talk about the Endangered Species Act and maybe your role in advocating for your company and for farmers out in the countryside.
Yeah, so the Endangered Species Act is there to protect those species that the government has identified as endangered. And since 1972, 1973, we've had that in place. The EPA is required, as they register pesticides or they review them, to do a consultation and make sure that no new information has come to light or nothing shows that they may adversely impact the habitat. And there was a disagreement, maybe some modeling, some disagreements with regard to how much risk there was on certain species, whether that's an animal or a plant species or a habitat. And so they got behind, some of those consultations didn't happen, and it ended up with litigation. And over years, that litigation just increased. We saw products get taken away, and eventually there was a settlement in 2023 that resulted in the EPA saying, okay, we're going to come up with a work plan that's going to lay out how we ensure that herbicides, insecticides, all pesticides that we have are going where they're supposed to go and not where they're not.
Now, the herbicide strategy for the Environmental Protection Agency, some producers may say, I've never heard about this. Why is this suddenly, why could this impact my farming? It's actually been around for a while, but it's been in how to implement it. That's been the process. Let's talk about a quick history of that and what's on the horizon with this strategy.
Yep, so EPA put the draft language out there. It was finalized in the summer of 2024. And so everything moving forward, every herbicide that goes through a new registration or that 15-year review will now go through the herbicide strategy evaluation. So we have one product today that it has gone through that process. Everything moving forward will go through it, and that will require you to look at the label. You will have to identify runoff and erosion mitigation points. That could be none. That could be 3, 6, 9. You'll need to go to a separate website, look through the chart and identify, do I have sandy soils? Do I live in a certain part of the country? The western United States, by default, may get 2 or 3 points just because of the geography that they exist in. Different types of consultation. All these different steps will get you a certain amount of points to make sure you satisfy that point requirement. You'll also have to look at your drift, new buffer requirements. Helena has a best-in-class adjuvant system. Using adjuvants can reduce those buffers by 15, 20%. On the one product that we have out there today, it lists at the label by ground application, if you use an adjuvant, no buffer requirement. And then lastly, you'll have to go to the mapping system and understand, is this a pesticide use limitation area? So you'll go to EPA's Bulletins Live 2 website, you'll type in the registration number for that product. Are there additional requirements? Am I in that polygon? And if so, comply with those.
But I'm just a wheat farmer. But again, that's a lot to digest right there,
It
too.
is.
And we all know that when rules and regulations pop up, at the end of the day, they started with good merit to protect the environment. And farmers and ranchers do such a good job of working to make sure their natural resources are taken care of. But these can get out of hand. And let's just talk about the importance of having science to back up and for you to go to the Hill and talk with these agencies and lawmakers about it. Because, like I said, it's all to make sure that everything is healthy and taken care of, but it can get out of hand sometimes.
That's right. And the EPA is in a unique spot where they're there to protect the environment. At the same time, since their creation, they have been given the authority to govern pesticides, which are there to kill things. A weed, an insect, a disease, protecting crops, protecting livestock, protecting human health. So they've got to walk that balance of how do I protect the environment, but also ensure that in protecting the environment, we need those critical tools. And science and a science-based, the risk-based system that FIFA subscribes to in the United States is the gold standard. That is not shared by everyone worldwide, but we believe it's the gold standard. Are we going to love every decision that comes out of the Environmental Protection Agency? No. But we believe in that risk-based system. There's always tweaks, there's always improvements that we can make, even within the herbicide strategy. Conversations with Congress, conversations with the new administration to say, hey, look, let's always work, just like our operation. How do we always work to improve something to make sure it makes the most sense and really lays out that balance of let's protect the environment. Farmers are and ranchers are the original stewards of the land. Nobody wants to protect that environment more than they do, but we also need to make sure that we don't take away our freedom to operate and use the critical tools that allow us to do that.
Obviously, we do have a new administration, new EPA administrator, but we also have a farm bill. It's running on an extension twice now. What are some of the conversations from your role in government affairs that you are focused on, as the House most likely will push out their farm bill that Representative Thompson put out, but the Senate has an opportunity, of course. Nothing's out yet. Obviously, we had that budget vote last week, but
A couple other things going on right now. I think there's some optimism that we'll have it by the summer. The good news is with the Republicans maintaining the House, Chairman Thompson's language is already out there. Now, could there be some adjustments to priorities? There were probably some compromises that were made the last go around, knowing that it was going to have to go through a Senate or a Democrat-led Senate. Now Republicans control the Senate. So there may be some tweaks there to the House language, but we're not starting from scratch. On the Senate side, Senator Bozeman had rebuttal language during the previous Congress of how he would write a farm bill if he were in control. So he's not working from scratch either. So I think we do have that working in our favor. It's just a number of, hey, are there some priorities that have come to light in 2025 that maybe we weren't thinking about in 23 or 24 when this first came up? But I do believe that once we get through the budget reconciliation, some of the appointees that the Senate is working on, there's some optimism that we can get this through there, update reference prices, make sure that we're providing the certainty that farmers and ranchers need.
Anything else from your preview of being out and being a voice and an advocate on behalf of Helena and producers in the countryside out in D.C.?
Just speak up. You know, be the voice. There's a lot of folks that have differing opinions about how agriculture should look, and many of them are there every day, and they're speaking out every day. And farmers and ranchers are busy working. They're doing what they love to do. They're chasing their passion, but ultimately that means that they're not in their state capital or they're not in D.C. And so when you have the opportunity to speak up and advocate yourself and be an ambassador, do it.
Well, again, Sean, thanks for joining us here today, and for all of our friends tuning in to learn more about Helena and all the products that they have for producers to be more efficient, more sustainable, and obviously for topics maybe you don't think about, the endangered species side of it, the regulation side of it, contact your local Helena rep or visit them online as well. And again, a big shout out for Helena for sponsoring our Commodity Classic coverage here in Denver.